everybody to Build Propulsion Lab interviews at DPE Summit 2023. As you can see, we upgraded for the last time. From the last time, we have lab coats, so very fancy. And my first guest is Max Kanat-Alexander. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
You might have seen him in one of the latest episodes of DPE Lowdown. That if you don't watch, you really should. And Max is also a speaker here in the DP Summit. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for joining us. What are you going to talk about?
So I'm going to talk about how to make your developers unproductive and unhappy.
Okay, that's an interesting topic for Developer Productivity Engineering Summit.
Yeah, so I figured I'd twist it around because what I wanted to talk about was what are some of the biggest barriers that people run into when they're working on developer productivity or they are developer productivity teams, and what's the actual way to go about handling that. But I thought I'd take a little bit of a humorous bent on it.
So you're just going to explain like what not to do.
I'm going to explain what not to do, and then I'm also going to explain maybe what you should do instead.
Yeah, and spoilers, what shouldn't we do and what should we do?
So probably the biggest takeaway that I hope people get from the talk is that the most important thing you need to do is understand the problem. So you need to actually talk to people. You need to actually find out from your developers what the problem is, and not just make an assumption of what the problem is. Because, of course, we're all developers. So we all know how developers work, right? Don't all developers work exactly like us?
They have exactly the same problems that we have, obviously.
Obviously, every developer works the exact same way that I do. And thus, we'll just build one set of tools for everybody, and I'll just solve my problems. And as long as I solve my problems, everybody else's problems will be solved too.
Because they're exactly the same, obviously.
Exactly the same.
Yeah. So, jokes aside, you mentioned this in the DP Lowdown, the whole talk to people stuff. This comes really hard to us because, correct me if I'm wrong, we are in software, so we don't have to talk to people.
My observation was, I remember when I was in college, the class that my computer science classmates wanted to do the least was English.
Yep.
Right? And, I was a sort of an odd one out because I'd always been a writer and an actor and things like that. So I was always, fairly outgoing, wanted to interact with other people. And, to be fair, I don't think it's universal. I do think that, here's what I think. I think that developers want to have impact. I think they want their work to be effective. And I think the people who work on developer productivity want their work to be effective. And the thing that I've learned after 20 years of working on developer productivity is that the most common mistake that developer productivity teams make is solving the wrong problem. Because if you spend a lot of time building a solution for the wrong problem, then all that happens is you deliver this thing and you're like, yay, it's great. And your manager is like, yay, it's great. And all the developers of the rest of the company are like, pitchforks, why don't you solve my problem?
This is so good. There are there is like a method, and there is a methodology, and there is a right way to talk to developers. You just don't just go like, "Hey, Dave, what's your problem today?"
Yeah, there's so much to know about it. I mean, I can't even in this little conversation that I'm having, I can't refer to everything. People know about Dora, they know about space, but one of the things that I think is really not as commonly known is survey design. And even me, I'm not very good at that, right? But one thing that I have learned is that a lot of the time you can't just go and ask people like, what's your problem? What do you think your problem is? Sometimes you can. Sometimes you can just be like, tell me what your problem is. Unless the problem, that question would make it sound like they're an idiot. Like, if it makes people think, like if the answer would sound like I'm a bad software engineer to them, even if that's not true, if just like that would be their reaction, you can't ask them the question. Like if you ask people like, what part of the code base do you find complex? People will be like, well, nothing. I'm brilliant and perfect and I understand every code, which is not true. Not true of any software engineer in the world. Never true, right? But if you ask them questions like, what's frustrating? what's the most frustrating thing? Like what is the piece of code that you're terrified that if you touch it, you're going to break something? Like, so it's really those emotional indicators that I've found to be effective. There's way more to know about survey design than that, and that's not even for survey design. That's really for like interviews, like if you want to go talk to people. But there's so much to know about how to validly collect this information from people.
This is like an entirely complicated foreign space for most of us. And I guess there are a lot of roles, even in software engineering, that kind of serve other engineers. And the knowledge of what to do, how to do it, and how to ask the right questions, it's a different domain that not a lot of people realize how important it is.
Yeah, but even if you don't have an expertise in it, you still just go talk to people. That's the simplicity of it.
Yep.
Just go find out from your developers what their problems really are. And if you want to validate that with some quantitative data, you should. And sometimes you can find those problems in the quantitative data, but a lot of the time it's easier to just go talk to people.
So this saying how the plural of anecdote is not data?
Yes.
What's the most interesting about this quote? That the original quote is exactly the opposite. It's like, it is. The person who said it, I don't remember the name, but he actually said the plural of anecdote is data, which makes perfect sense for social studies, and he is like a social studies guy. And it is. I mean, what do you have except of anecdotes? Like, you ask people, they'll tell you stuff, you aggregate it, you make conclusions out of it. It's data. The plural of anecdote is data.
Yeah, so this gets us into a whole subject, which is how science works in the social sciences as opposed to in the physical sciences.
Exactly.
Which is a topic that I think we can't cover here in this short talk that we're having. I would love to talk about that more. I have opinions about it. Obviously I'm a software engineer, so I don't know that everybody would want to listen to my opinions about it, but it is sort of my job. Like, my job is to kind of do social sciences on software engineers.
Exactly.
And I have learned a lot about how to validly do that and how not to validly do that, because it's not as simple as like, if you have enough anecdotes, then that is valid, because there can be exceptions. There's edge cases to that. There's more fundamental underlying principles that you would use to really be able to capture that information. But there's I can't cover it. I'm trying to find even a sentence that I can give, and I there's too much to talk about it.
That's fine. We should schedule a longer interview. We actually do this format online as well, and then it could go like up to an hour or whatever. Maybe it's a good topic for us to chat, because I would love to hear your opinions on that. I have opinions which are much less based in like whatever science or reality or any research that I did. It's just stuff that I think it will be a great conversation. Maybe we should schedule that.
Yeah.
For now, Max, thank you very much. That was great. Good luck with your talk. And the talk obviously will be online, like all the rest of the content of DPE Summit. Don't miss it. Thank you very much, and see you in the next episode of Build Propulsion Lab here in DPE Summit 2023. Ciao.